Have you ever caught yourself doing the exact thing you promised you would stop? You unlock your phone without remembering why. You open the refrigerator when you are not hungry. You answer one harmless email at night, and 40 minutes later, the people you love have gone to bed without you. On the outside, it looks like a small failure of discipline. Inside, it feels more personal. If you knew better, why did you not choose better? Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is WiseMind Stories. Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit offers an unsettling answer. Much of the time, the problem is not that you made a bad decision. The problem is that an old decision has been repeated so often that your brain no longer asks you. A cue appears, a routine begins, a reward closes the loop, and by the time you notice, the choice has already become a pattern. In this episode, we are going to follow one ordinary habit into the moment it becomes expensive. We will see why the brain creates automatic routines, why awareness often arrives too late, and how to map the invisible loop before trying to change it. Because you cannot interrupt a pattern you still mistake for a personality. At 9:37 on a Tuesday night, Mara Ellison was sitting in the back row of her daughter's school auditorium. The lights were low. 20 cardboard planets hung from the ceiling on fishing line. On stage, 12-year-old June stood beside a papier-mâché model of Saturn, waiting to explain why the planet's rings were slowly disappearing. Mara had promised one thing: no work. She had turned her phone face down. She had told her team that Brightcart, the grocery delivery company where she led customer insights, would survive 90 minutes without her. She had even placed both hands beneath her legs, as if she could physically prevent herself from reaching for the screen. Then the phone vibrated. Once, Mara did not pick it up. It vibrated again. Her right hand moved before the argument in her head had finished. The message was not an emergency. A dashboard had detected a 2-point drop in late-night orders across 3 neighborhoods. The alert was automated. No one had asked Mara to respond. She opened the dashboard anyway. The blue graph loaded. She checked the regional breakdown, then the weather, then a promotion that had ended at 9. She typed 3 lines to an analyst, deleted 2, rewrote them, and pressed send. When she looked up, the audience was applauding. June was walking off the stage. Mara had missed the entire presentation. In the car, she tried to recover the moment. "Tell me the part about the rings," she said. "I want the full version." June kept her eyes on the window. "It's okay." Children sometimes say it's okay when they have already learned that explaining the hurt will require them to comfort the adult who caused it. Mara felt that sentence land. At the next red light, she placed her phone in the glove compartment. "I'm serious," she said. "No more checking at night." June nodded, but not because she believed her. She nodded because they had had this conversation before. That was the part Mara could not defend. She was not careless. She remembered birthdays, deadlines, allergy lists, school forms, and the exact coffee order of a colleague she had not seen in 2 years. She could identify a failing business metric inside a 100-row spreadsheet in under a minute. Yet most nights, between 9:30 and 10, she disappeared into her phone. Sometimes the cue was a vibration. Sometimes it was the blue light of the charging screen. Sometimes nothing obvious happened at all. She would be loading the dishwasher, folding laundry, or brushing her teeth, and suddenly the phone would be in her hand. Afterward, she would tell herself the same story. "Work is demanding. I am responsible. This is what leadership costs." But a story can explain a behavior without revealing what controls it. The next morning, Mara arrived early at Brightcart's glass-walled office. She opened a new notebook and wrote a title across the first page: "Why I Have No Self-Control." Her colleague, Nia Brooks, leaned into the doorway. "That looks cheerful." Mara told her about the science fair. Nia listened without offering the kind of reassurance that turns confession into escape. Then she asked, "What happened right before you checked?" The phone buzzed. "And what did you do?" "Checked the dashboard." "What did you get?" "A problem." "That's not a reward." Mara looked at her. Nia had spent 2 years working with product teams that studied repeated customer behavior. She knew that if people kept performing an action, the visible result was not always the thing their brain had learned to value. "Try again," she said. "What did you get immediately?" Mara wanted to answer information, but that did not feel complete. She remembered the moment the dashboard loaded. The uncertainty disappeared. The vague possibility that something might be wrong became a number she could name. "Relief," Mara said. Nia turned the notebook around and crossed out Mara's title. Under it, she wrote 3 words: Q. Routine. Reward. That simple sequence is one of the central ideas in the power of habit. A cue tells the brain that a familiar pattern is available. A routine is the physical, mental, or emotional behavior that follows. A reward helps the brain decide whether the sequence is worth remembering. Over time, the loop becomes more efficient. The brain does not need to reconsider every movement. It can conserve attention for other things while a learned sequence runs in the background. This ability is not a flaw. It is part of how human beings function. Imagine having to relearn how to tie your shoes every morning. Imagine consciously planning every movement required to back a car out of a driveway, brush your teeth, make coffee, or enter a password. A life without automatic routines would drown in tiny decisions. Habit is the brain's way of turning a repeated sequence into a single unit. The cost is that efficiency does not ask whether a routine is still serving you. The brain can automate what protects your life and what quietly damages it. It can learn to reach for a seatbelt. It can learn to reach for a cigarette. It can learn to soften your voice when someone is frightened. It can learn to become defensive before the other person has finished speaking. Automatic does not mean meaningless. It means the meaning was assigned earlier. Mara spent the next 5 evenings observing rather than fixing. That felt irresponsible to her. She wanted a rule, an app blocker, a locked drawer, or a severe promise. Observation seemed passive. But if she changed everything at once, she would never know what the loop actually was. So she kept the red notebook nearby. Each time she reached for her phone after dinner, she wrote down 5 things: where she was, what time it was, what had happened immediately before, how she felt, and what she did next. The first entry came at 9:41. Location: kitchen. Before, June asked whether Mara had signed a permission form. Feeling: behind. Action: checked bright card alerts. The second came at 9:34 the next night. Location: sofa. Before, Daniel, Mara's husband, asked whether they could talk about summer plans. Feeling: unprepared. Action: checked email. The third came at 9:38. Location: bathroom. Before, no notification, no conversation, no visible event. Feeling: restless. Action: opened the dashboard. By Friday, one detail had become impossible to ignore. The cue was not only the vibration, it was the time. Around 9:37, the day became quiet enough for all the unfinished parts of Mara's life to become audible. The school form, the summer decision, the difficult conversation, the unreturned message from her mother. Work offered a familiar door out of that uncertainty. The routine was checking Brightcart. The reward was not productivity. It was the feeling that, for a few minutes, she knew exactly what needed to be done. That is why some habits survive our best advice. We argue with the routine while protecting the reward. We say, "Stop checking your phone," without asking what the phone provides. We say, "Stop eating at night," without asking whether the food delivers comfort, stimulation, a pause, or companionship. We say, "Stop overworking," without asking whether work has become the only place where competence feels guaranteed. What repeated action in your life looks irrational from the outside but makes emotional sense from the inside? What happens in the minute before it begins? What discomfort disappears, even briefly, after the routine is complete? And if the behavior vanished tonight, what feeling would return without protection? You cannot interrupt a pattern you still mistake for a personality. Mara had called herself obsessive, unavailable, and bad at boundaries. Those labels sounded like explanations, but they gave her nothing to observe. A loop was different. A loop had parts. Parts could be seen. The following Tuesday, 1 week after the science fair, June spread a history project across the dining table. Mara sat beside her with the red notebook closed. At 9:36, her shoulders tightened. No alert appeared. Still, Mara looked toward the hallway where her phone was charging. This was the moment she had missed in every earlier attempt. The routine had not begun, but the loop had opened. She whispered the sequence to herself. Time. Uncertainty. Check. Relief. See. June glanced up. What? Nothing, Mara said. Then she corrected herself. Actually, not nothing. I'm noticing something. She wrote one line in the notebook and stayed in the chair. For the next 60 seconds, the urge grew louder. Her mind offered reasonable arguments. There might be a regional outage. Nia might need a decision. Responsible leaders do not ignore data. Then the urge changed. It did not disappear. It became specific. Mara was not experiencing a command. She was experiencing a learned sequence waiting for completion. That distinction did not make the moment easy. It made the moment visible. She asked June to show her the first paragraph. At 9:44, Mara checked the phone once, deliberately. There was no emergency. She had not defeated the habit. She had found the place where a future choice might fit. That is a quieter victory than a dramatic promise, but it is more useful. Awareness does not erase a loop. It turns an invisible instruction into something you can examine. If you want to map one habit this week, do not begin with punishment. Begin with 4 observations. First, name the routine in concrete language. Not, "I procrastinate," but "I open short videos when a difficult task reaches the point where I might fail." Second, record the cue. Look at location, time, emotional state, other people, and the action immediately before the routine. Third, name the immediate reward, not the long-term consequence. What changes in the next 30 seconds? Do you feel relief, stimulation, certainty, connection, distance, or control? Fourth, watch for the opening. The habit does not begin when the routine is finished. It begins when the cue makes the routine feel inevitable. Call it routine, cue, reward, opening. You are not trying to become a perfect observer. You are collecting enough evidence to stop treating a repeatable pattern like a permanent identity. The next night, Mara reached for the phone again. This time, she stopped with her hand halfway across the table. Not because she had become more disciplined in 24 hours, because she finally recognized the first frame of the film. The cue had appeared. The routine was waiting. The reward was already being promised. You cannot interrupt a pattern you still mistake for a personality. So before you ask, "What is wrong with me?" try a more useful question. What loop is running here? If this story helped you see one of your own patterns, write down the cue, routine, and reward tonight. Then subscribe to WiseMind Stories, because seeing the loop is only the beginning. Knowing the reward explains why an action repeats, but it does not yet explain why the pull can begin before the reward arrives. In the next episode, we will explore the craving brain, how anticipation turns an ordinary loop into desire, how companies learn to engineer that desire, and why the feeling you chase may arrive before you make the choice. Because sometimes the habit is not waiting for the reward, it is waiting for the promise. EP2, The Craving Before the Choice. Mara discovers that Brightcard is not merely responding to customer habits. Its newest product is learning how to create them.